Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well today, and thank you for joining us for our webinar on Ask the Expert, Critical Steps in Planning and Managing Postgres Data Migration. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes before getting started to allow everyone who has signed up time to join, so please stay tuned and we will be kicking off very shortly. Hi everyone, we are ready to begin. So thank you again for joining our Ask the Expert webinar today. My name's Alice and I work in the marketing team here at EDB, and I'm just going to run through a short bit of housekeeping before handing over to Kevin Lee, who is our Sales Engineer Director in EMEA and is going to be your host for the webinar today. The first point to make you aware of is that we are recording, and we will be sharing the recording alongside the slides after the webinar. And secondly, the lines are muted. So if you have a question, please can you send it via the Q&A question panel, and our experts will be answering these throughout the session. There is a prize on offer for the best questions, so please ask away, and any questions we don't have time to answer within the hour, we will follow up with afterwards. And that's all from me, so I will hand over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Alice. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Ask the Expert session. This is the third episode. We're going to cover the critical steps of planning and migrating your databases to Postgres. So let's get started. Again, a quick intro. Myself, Kevin Lee. I lead the SE team in EMEA within EDB company. And I have the pleasure from Ed Bangma from our expert team from the sales engineer EMEA, who has been doing databases more than 25 years, I think. So he has a lot of experiences in terms of transforming migration of different databases and also some of the best practices. Along we also have Rob Polkmore, who is at the background answering questions that you might have. So please feel free to ask any questions through the Q&A section. So let's look at the agenda today. So we're going to cover a lot of the migration, why migrate, and also what are the best practices, what kind of a strategy you're thinking about, and Ed's going to walk us through. And from EDB, we have the best practices, what are the toolings, what are the steps, how can we help our customers and partners and prospects to think about their migration strategy. And we're also ending the presentation with a demo. So the best question that you pose on the Q&A, we're going to give a small prize of €25 as a gift card to you. So feel free to ask questions during the session. So with that, I pass it to you, Ed.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Good afternoon, you all, or good morning, or maybe I should say good day, because I'm not sure what time zones you all are located, but thank you for joining this session. And I'm gonna talk you through what is a migration, what is involved in a migration. And like Kevin said, I has more than 25 years of experience working with databases of many kinds. And so can you go to the next slide, Kevin? I'm not, Kevin is my my remote control for handling the slides, so maybe I will.
Yeah, I'm your clicker today.
Yeah, you're my clicker today. So thank you for that, Kevin. So when we talk about migration, there are a few methods of migration options you can do when you talk about the database migration. And the first database migration is just a rehosting, meaning a lift and shift, or moving from an on-premise environment running on Linux to a cloud environment also running on Linux. It doesn't change anything from a database perspective, only the underlying hardware or maybe even operating system gonna change. For example, if you want to move from AIX or Solaris or HP UX to Linux, then that's still a rehosting. But as you also know that that the NDNS changed, but mostly the database vendors offering tools to change the NDNS of the database when rehosting a database from to another platform. And another platform, I mean, you're going to upgrade the operating system or you move to a different hardware platform, but the database remains the same. It remains DB2, Sybase, Oracle, Postgres. There's no change in the database you're using. Another migration, a data of migration, is what we call the replatforming. And this is what I'm going to focus on the rest of the presentation, because this is what I mean with a database migration. You're going from database vendor A to database vendor B. And that is what replatforming. And of course, when you can be a very complex task, moving from one database vendor to another database vendor. And what you want to do is that you have to do it with, well, at a minimal risk, and that the applications you have, well, it would be great if they even can run unchanged to the new platform. That's not the case in every scenario, but you want to move to a new database for several reasons. That comes next. And the other possible option when we talk about the data migration is restructuring, when you have when you, for example, want to move to a microservices architecture and you want to break up a monolithic application database into multiple services and go to a microservices driven environment. But like I said, we're going to focus the rest of the presentation on the replatforming, going from one database vendor to another database vendor. So the next, we have a poll, and I just want to know what database type at this moment are you using the most at your company?
We just give a few minutes for the attendees to answer.
Yeah.
Or few, I wouldn't say few minutes, 30 seconds, I would say.
Yeah, something like that, 30 seconds. I think Alice can see how many respondents were there.
Yeah, oh, great. A lot of Oracle, a lot of Postgres, and then
even a lot of
SQL
Postgres,
Server.
And SQL Server as well. So thank you very much for filling in. And one of the things I'm gonna end with is a demo, and I'm gonna do a migration of an Oracle schema to Postgres. So, like I said, I will talk about the possible options of migration, but why do you want to migrate? What could be the reason for you to migrate? First of all, it can be costs, because proprietary versus open source, that can be a big difference in operating cost, because license versus only support costs. And so that could be a driver for you to move from a closed source vendor, database vendor, to an open source, because of the costs that are there. Another reason could be the fact that for agility, that you want to have the ability to quickly respond to business needs, requirements, maybe adopt new ways of working regarding DevOps. And what I see is most of that in the open source community, that those are more able to respond to new technologies, etc. It could also be that you're, as a company, changing your deployment model. And what the trend is at the moment, that a lot of companies are moving away from their own data center. They don't want to have their own data centers anymore and moving to the cloud, to the various vendors we have in the cloud, like Amazon and Microsoft. And such a move can also trigger a data migration, and that you want to move away from the current database to a new database platform, because it gives you the opportunity to maybe change a legacy application to a more new architecture. Another reason can be innovation. Like I just said, open source tends to innovate at a higher rate than proprietary software, and open source also seems to adapt quicker to new tools that are on the market, etc. So that could also be a reason to move from to a new, in this case, an open source database. Another reason can be consolidation, where you want to get rid of the large sprawl of database flavors and versions you're running in your environment, and you want to standardize maybe on 2 or 3 flavors and not so many versions. That could also be a trigger or a reason for you to standardize on just a couple of databases, like an open source database. And of course, when you make the change, when you have decided to do a migration to a new database, you also want to make sure that you choose a database that is future-proof. That if you know, if I'm going to select this database, it will be in the market there for many years to come. There's a large community of developers working on it, that there is a company that looks after it and supports it. Right? So that is one of the reasons you want to move away as well. So next slide, please, Kevin. But it's not an easy task when performing a migration. There can be a lot of reasons why you want to do a database migration, but there also are thresholds or obstructions that you have to overcome when performing the migration. What kind of obstacles will be there? They can be very hard, complex, because of the application or applications it used, the complexity of the application and the database. For example, the size of the database. It can be a database of many terabytes in size, but also how many objects are present in the database. Are there user-defined types? Are there many written procedures in the database? I know that there is a developer group that talks about the big fat database, where you would like the business rules as close to the data as possible. So you should implement a lot of stored procedures to implement those business rules. What also could be a reason is your current contract with your database supplier. That's still for example, it's not at the end of life, or this contract, it needs to be terminated, and it can be fines be included. On the other hand, when the contract is at its renewal state, it can also be a compelling event to move away from a closed source database to an open source database. So it can be an obstruct, but it can also be a compelling event to move to another platform. Another obstacle, of course, can be the fact that you have invested in your people. They are used to working with a specific kind of database. They know the syntax, they know how it works, they know how to do performance tuning, etc. So those skills that has been built in the years are valuable. And if you move to a new platform, the staff needs to be retrained on the new database platform. And wouldn't it be great if you would move to a database platform prevent is maybe not a good word, but that helps you, the investment you have done in the skills they can be retained, because you move to a database which has compatibility for the other database aboard. So you can, the skills that you have learned is not not thrown away and can be reused. And maybe, to be honest, the biggest obstacle when moving from a database to a new database vendor can be the application itself. Because maybe it has been designed, written, coded for a specific type of database with functions and options that this database offer. So from that perspective, it would also be great if the application the application changes to adapt to the new database can be kept as minimal as possible. And I'm going to talk later on also about that.
So with that, Ed, there is also a question. When you migrate something, whether it's a database from one platform to another platform, there is obstacle about risk. People worry about, would it work? How long it's going to take? How much it's going to cost? You know, how many people need to be trained because it's got a complete new platform. There's a lot of risks involved.
Yeah.
I presume you're going to cover that later on, right?
Yeah.
About the tooling and about some of the assessment we can do. So you will talk about, I wouldn't say eliminating a risk, but you can also by projecting what are the things that require, what are the things that need to investigate to show that we can minimizing the risk of migrating from other databases to Postgres, right?
Yeah, that's a valid question, and to be honest, Kevin, you already more or less answered it. But that's one of the risks when you move away from an existing known technology to a new technology. There are a lot of factors involved that can introduce risk. About training the people, how we're going to do testing. Are there any tools available? Are there any expertise available in-house or on the market that you can use to mitigate all those risks? But I'm going to talk about it later on in the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Right. Yeah. So when you migrate, there are of course, and we more or less talked a little bit about it. Some strategic things to consider when you do the migration is when you start, you have to assess your data before you begin. Is the data accurate? Is it incomplete? What are you going to do with it? Is it also a good moment to have a closer look at the data? With do I need to migrate all the data, or are there some is there data in my database columns or that doesn't need to be moved to the new environment because they're obsolete? And I do not know how it with you is, but at home I have a very big backup system. I never clean it because there's so many room, but there are stuff I know for sure there are files on it that can be deleted because I'm never going to use them anymore or look at it. So that's the same with data. So assess your data before you begin, and based on that, you can do a cleanup of your data, remove old data, incomplete data, or data not needed anymore. And so that's one of the things that a migration can be used as well to do data quality. Look at the data and clean the data before or during the migration. And of course, the data will be mutated. So there will also be procedures required to maintain and this data quality, and have not even talked about security yet, but that also has to be taken into account on your current system. What are the security measures that you have taken for to protect your data? Of course, they have to be migrated as well to the new platform, that you have the same level of security of your data. And with governance, it's the same audits, reporting, ensuring the integrity are also important. and also for the migration for the migrated environment. They need to be in place as well. They cannot be forgotten when migrating. So when migrating, there are a couple of strategies you can use when migrating, and I think the first one I would nearly call it the Big Bangma, like my surname or my last name. But now the Big Bang, it's a one-time event. You're going to do everything at once, and your applications will experience downtime when doing a Big Bang migration. And it can be, of course, lengthy in time because of the amount of data maybe that needs to be migrated to the new platform. On the other hand, the Big Bang is, I think, maybe the least complex method of migrating from to a new platform.
Yeah, I think we see that quite a lot of non-mission critical and like a very small database. They might be able to, hey, I'm going to migrate. It's a simple schema migration kind of thing, right? We've seen that quite a bit of, they got a big bang, or they said one-time migration, whatever you name, you call it. It's, yeah, we see every now and then some of these applications.
Correct, and like you said, it will be mostly be directed by how many downtime from a business perspective you can afford when doing when migrating. And to overcome that, you have to what we call a trickle migration, in which in which case both systems are up and running. So your source database is up and running, and your target database, your new environment, is also up and running, and you're going to migrate in portions from the old to the new system. And during that time, you can make sure that the application keeps on running. But this kind of migrations, compared to the Big Bang approach, can be complex in design. But on the other hand, if done right, you can reduce risk with the trickle migration. And one type of migration I think we see more and more is what we call the zero downtime database migration, where both systems are up and running. And when you perform using replication technologies, etc., to move from your current database to the new environment, while the application still is running, and maybe the downtime you have with the zero database downtime migration is the fact then when you switch the application off on the old system and turn it on the new system. So the downtime there will be very limited.
So with that, Ed, the question is, you can mix and match, right? There's a strategy here. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have to choose one of them. You can choose some of them are like a big bang, some of them zero downtime, some of them very tactical as well. You can migrate. So you can mix and match some of these strategy given the complexity of the application, or as well as the size of the data and the timeline, the time window, right?
Yeah, those are the criteria you use when what kind of migration method you use when migrating to the new environment. And there's no one size fits all, so it all depends on the criteria you just mentioned, the downtime you have, how complex the application is, how big the database is, etc. Those determine if you what kind of type of migration you're going to use, or you're going to maybe mix the type of migration and perform that.
Okay. Now you're going to show us the steps in migration.
Yeah, yes. Now some steps in the migration. Of course, the first step you're going to do is that you have that there is made a decision that you're going to do a replatforming. That has been decided that you're going to move away from a specific vendor and replatform your application database to open source, for example, to Postgres. And of course, then the second step is that you're going to analyze, well, what we want to do. Is it feasible? So yes, are there any alternatives we can implement? And of course, this is also the time to assess your data and for example, and do also data quality, do it a cleanup, but also identify which tools, procedures, which scripts are in use, and that also needs to be migrated. And this step will give you a useful insight if the database migration is doable from a time and cost perspective. Then you have analyzed it, and then the next phase is that you start planning the migration. Which strategy we're going to use? Are we going to use Big Bang? Do we do trickle? Do we go zero downtime? Or going to do mix and match? But of course, based on the business requirements and the complexity, how much downtime do we get from the business? Is it 2 minutes, or is it a weekend, or is it a complete week? For example, I've been involved in a migration which they choose zero downtime, and it took 2.5 weeks to migrate a 15 terabyte database from one to another, and after that, it was just a application switch which took less time, but also make sure that you identify and involve the correct personas, the people that are involved with the application, the people that are gonna be responsible for the operation. Make sure that they are involved at the proper time, and maybe train them as well. Identify interfaces, the integration you have, reports, tools, scripts, procedures, security, and what I have not talked about is there a fallback plan? What if the migration fails? How easy or what needs to be done to fall back? Can we go back? So that needs part of the migration itself. And then you start building the migration solution based on the schemas, the assessment, the code you have found, the data, how much, the tooling, the scripts, the interface, and of course the application itself. And one big part of the migration, of course, is test. Test the migration. Test if everything has come across. Test the code that is maybe in the database. Test the application. And when testing, it gives you the ability to solve issues you found during the migration phase. And maybe it also gives you the ability to tune the environment. And when you have migrated, of course, you have to think about the daily operations. Also think about high availability requirements, security, etc. And then at the moment there comes a moment in time where you say, okay, this is a go or this is a no-go. We have a successful migration, the application is running fine. So that's when we are complete, cut over to the new environment. I think you have to do one more click, Kevin, on the slide deck. And then you're on the new system. So,
in fact, Ed, there is a question from Otto, and I think Rob already answered it. Otto suggested strongly to have a POC somewhere in the migration journey. I completely agree with that. So, what is your take on the POC?
Well, that's what I think. Also, what I meant, test the migration, but you can also test the migration with a POC, and but a POC is a proof of
concept.
concept that what you have decided with your migration plan will work. It will go. So it can be done on, of course, on a scaled down system, for example, not on a full blown. Or maybe you want to do a full blown proof of concept for data migration. How long does it take? So yes, a proof of concept. I share it, or I. Let's say it's the phase that you have to test the migration, and you can do it using a POC, maybe in the early stages with the analyze feasibility of your and looking at alternatives. Maybe that's the step where you can introduce a proof of concept. Okay, well, I have this database with this schema, this application. Let's do a quick scan how we can migrate to in this case to Postgres. Let's be honest.
Okay, sounds good.
So when migrating, and just to dive a little bit deeper on we talked about the database migrate, but it consists, of course, of objects and code. Can they be moved one-to-one to the new database? Do they need to be changed? Do the data types map? Are the from database vendor A and database vendor B can we map data types? We know that most relational databases support the NC SQL standards, but still there are proprietary syntax exists. So we have to solve that as well. Identify the incompatibilities. It would be great if we can use tools for that, and so we can solve those issues. And of course, migrating data. I told you data quality is Siri just starts to talk.
She got an opinion about it as well.
So data is it a very big database? How complex is the data? Most databases are not standalone database, but they have integration with other systems. How you have to look at that. There also has to be a fallback scenario. What you're gonna do? Are you gonna use build the migration tools yourself, or you're gonna have to look at the market if there are third-party vendor tools that can help you migrate a database from a data perspective and from a code perspective. When migrating, you have to choose on the infrastructure. What is the deployment I'm gonna select? Will it be on premises? Will I go to the cloud? Am I going to use on a bare metal machine or virtual machines? Or even I'm going to run in a container like Kubernetes? What are my requirements regarding availability? Is this a mission critical system that needs to be high available? What kind of options does this new database offer me to implement this, so I can comply to the availability requirements as well as with security? Are there tools there that I can still fulfill the requirements my business have regarding security, etc.?
I think you're going to talk about this as well with the tooling that can help to decide about the compatibility, the migration of the data that you're going to talk about, and the infrastructure deployment, and you're gonna cover as well. I think application part is a slightly challenging, because every application is going to be different. They will use it, whether it's going to be web, it's going to be 3T architecture, or all kinds of things. So we can cover that in one of your demo. I think is gonna talk about it. Right?
Yeah, and that's well. How are you going to do the migration? I've talked about, are you going to do it manual? You're going to do it all yourself, or do you going to use tooling that is available on the market? Are you also going to use the expertise that's there on the market to help you do a successful migration? We from EDB, we have the tools, the services, and and the expertise in-house to help you with a migration to Postgres. And in the past, we have done, well, I have 10 fingers, but I think we have about done 300 plus.
Yeah, we have about 300 plus
Postgres. So, and looking at tools, they can do a lot for you. I always call that the 80-20 rule. When using a tool to migrate a database, either it will be data, it will be code. A tool can falls into the category of the 80-20 rule. So 80% can be automated by the tool, and 20% needs manual intervention.
I think it depends also, Ed. I think some use cases we've seen, like it depends how complex the database is.
Yes.
Sometimes it could be 90%, 90-10.
And in my demo, you will see it's 100%.
Oh, okay.
But that's what I meant. In general, you can say that tooling will help you have the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
So what kind of type of tools and capabilities are needed during the migration? The assess feasibility is, of course, you need to have a business case. You have to investigate how much work is involved. It would be great if you have a tool that can do a quick assessment on your database objects and database code. We have the migration portal for that, which has Oracle compatibility built in with the advanced server, the Postgres advanced server. And that can help you assess very quickly. I have here a schema. What is the percentage that will be migrated from Oracle to Postgres with minimal effort? So when planning the migration, you have to estimate the level of effort. You have to prioritize. I think what's going to be first, can be last. You have to define non-functional requirements and design a solution for that. And we with EDB can help you with that. We have our professional services where we have experts that can help you with the migration assessment and can also help you with the solution design and create an architecture, a Postgres architecture that, for example, will help you to get the high availability in place, which is required. Migrating database, schema, code and data. We have database compatibility. If Postgres and you have the EDB advanced server, the EDB advanced server has Oracle compatibility aboard, meaning that a lot of code objects are understood by advanced server. And also skill sets can be reused because we have EDB Plus and EDB Loader, tools like that. And we also, beside the migration portal to do a quick assessment, we also have the migration toolkit, which can migrate a complete schema or a complete database from Oracle to Postgres or from Postgres to SQL Server. Right? I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. You have replication, database links to migrate. And of course, you have to make sure that you can connect to your database with the interface that we support. The most generic or commonly used connectors like ODBC, JDBC, etc. And yeah, one of the things is, like I just told, is the advanced server or the EDB Postgres advanced server with built-in Oracle compatibility.
So Ed, you're going to show us this, right?
Yeah,
the capability with this. So let's skip through this and they can read about it.
Yeah, go to the best practices where there's, I think it's not oh, you skipped a slide, or?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, this one. The best. I don't think this is a limited list of best practices, but let's name a few. Best practices. Make sure there's a backup that's valid, that can be restored. Make sure that there's a fallback scenario in case the migration fails and you have to go back. Engage experts. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are people on this planet who has done this before you, which has created tools, which have created methods, and can help you in make this migration successful. And of course, that's one important thing. Stick to the plan. When you have created a migration plan, stick to it. Don't change the scope or deviate from the plan, because it can make it more complex when you decide to deviate from the plan. Like, for example, have you ever tried changing a tire on a car that's driving on the road? It's very difficult. Involve the stakeholders as well, get the right personas involved, make them responsible as well, and practice a migration plan. Do a POC or do a test migration, perform a dry run, train your operation staff on the new system. So when the new system is going into production, that all the tools are there to keep this new platform up and running. When possible, defer the creation. You're going to the next slide, Kevin?
Yes, so just wanted to speed up a little bit. Okay. So just like to ask the audience, if they are thinking about migration to Postgres, what kind of a timeline they're thinking about? Is it 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, or maybe not yet until maybe next year, more than 12 months? So just like to give about 10 seconds to the audience. Okay, great. Alice, can you share the result, please? Oh, okay. So there's some long-term discussion, I think, from the audience. They're thinking about maybe, I think this is something that you need to convince them to speed up instead of 12 months. So what are the things that you can help? So you're going to share a demo, right?
I'm going to share a demo, and I have to be a bit quicker. So, but first I want to show the environment of the demo. So you still have to show one slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. This is what I'm going to do, but please go to the next one. This is the environment I have running. I have an Oracle XE database running with a simple schema Scott with some tables and data and some stored procedures or functions. I'm going to do a quick assessment using the migration portal. I've used Oracle Data Pump to make an export, and I can get the DDL from the migration portal to create the objects in Postgres. And the final step is I'm going to do a real migration, real time, using the migration toolkit, which connects to the Oracle database and migrates objects and data to a Postgres database or a Postgres advanced server database running in the cloud in Azure. So that's my demo. So
I will stop sharing.
Yeah, and I'll share my screen. I'm going to share my whole screen. So, okay, then I'll first go to the migration portal. And this is the migration portal. I create a new project. I'm call it migration demo. I'm using JDBC. I'm using version 18. I'm using the XE, the extended edition of Oracle, and I'm going to advanced server version 14. And I already have created the DDL, the Scott schema from an 18 database using Data Pump, and I'm going to load it. I'm going to create this project, and it's also going to assess the objects.
So this is already a tooling that EDB provided to extract the DDL from an Oracle 18 database.
Or 19 as well. 19. And we're working on 21. Yeah.
So this is like an assessment that been extracted by the data bump to DDL, and then you are uploading it to this a portal page, migration portal.
Yeah,
I see.
Just by upload DDL. Here you see this on my local laptop. I've a couple of schemas downloaded, and I've selected the SCOT 18 schema to be assessed, loaded and assessed. So here you see it has 12 objects. 4 were can be just moved as is, and 8 were repaired or changed by the migration portal as such that it will create without any problems in Postgres.
So the migration portal is not only assessing, but it will map the differences and show you the differences between the Oracle database to Postgres.
Yes, I'm going to take a view as an example. You see in the view that it had to repair the view in order to successfully create on Postgres, and I can look at the view. What does it look like in Oracle code, and what does it look like in Postgres code? Here you see the Oracle construct, create, replace, force, additionable view, SCOT-amp. And here you see how the view will be created in Postgres, create or replace view SCOT. And you can also see what the migration portal had repaired. It had to remove the force and the additionable clause in order to successfully create this view in Postgres. And this is a quick example. And what I can do is I can choose migrate it to an existing. It then will generate SQL. I can also install, or I can go to a Postgres database in the cloud. If I choose an existing, it will I can select which schemas, and I can download the file. And here you see what it has been created. This can be run against a Postgres database. You see here you will create the schema. It will create the tables, the constraints, packages, etc. So this is a quick overview of the migration portal. The next step I want to do is go to the migration toolkit. So let's go to an Oracle database. I'm using SQL Developer to have a look at the database. So look at the table AMP, look at the data. And here, this is the 14. You all know SCOT, I guess, with the AMP table. And there is also a package, a function that I have created, raise salary, and that uses a specific Oracle construct, Pragma autonomous transaction, meaning that everything that happens within this function is a autonomous transaction that will be committed after it has been run. So, but it doesn't affect the transaction it comes from. So you can also see that it works. Select AMP actions. Always when I give a demo, I start to fail to type properly. Raise salary of employee and raise it with €50 or $50. Of course, I have to. This is the Postgres. I'm already. In Postgres, I can't do this. I can do this, but I'm not on Oracle. I have to do it from Dual. So here you see I've increased the salary. I can look at the table, refresh it, and there you see that I have now increased the salary. So now go to my Postgres database. I'm using pgadmin for that. It's running in the cloud. It's running on what I call Big Animal. So I'm going to connect to it. And here I've a Postgres advanced server database. And there is a ScotDB database already. I've created that on forehand, but there's only one schema in it, public. So the next step is that I'm going to migrate the data and objects to this new environment. And I'm going to use the migration toolkit for it. It's a command line tool. And it runs, in this case, on Linux. I can ask for help. And when I go to here, and here you see, and this is very interesting, the source database can be MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, Sybase, Postgres, or Enterprise DB, which is Enterprise DB is the advanced server of Postgres. And the target can also be Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, or Enterprise DB. So this is a toolkit that helps you migrate amongst these databases. And there are a lot of options, and one of them, I think, is the offline option. You can perform an offline migration, which only creates the files for the data and for the objects. But I also have to define where my source and my target are. Here you see my source database is my Oracle 18 XE database, and I'm connecting to the pluggable database XE PDB1 using a user that is allowed to access a schema and its objects and data. And the target database will be a advanced server database. It's a big animal database with a new managed service from EDB running Postgres in the cloud. I'm using this, and it's connecting to the Scott DB, and I'm using a user ID and password. So let's run the migration. It's really simple. I'm not using any options. I'm just running the migration, and I'm connecting to the Oracle database. And it's going to extract the objects and the data, and it's going to move them to Big Animal, to a Postgres advanced server. And here you see the summary, 5 tables, constraints, a view, 2 packages. And it was all successful. Let's go back to pgadmin. Let's do a refresh. And here you see my Scott schema now. Let's go to tables. Let's have a look at AMP. View edit data, see all rows. And here you see all the rows, 14 rows. And you also see that it's with the change. But let's see the package as well. And here you see that it has just created the package even with the specific Oracle pragma autonomous transaction, but that is the Oracle compatibility in the Postgres advanced server. So now let's run this, this as well to see that it works. Okay, so select AMP actions and erase salary from the same notes. And give it 50 more. And here you see the result. It has increased the salary by, the function runs in Postgres. And if I refresh my data, you see that here the data has changed as well. So this is a small demo using the migration toolkit to migrate a simple schema with some simple functions from Oracle to Postgres and show that it works. So this concludes my demo.
That's great, Ed. Appreciate it. So what you just did is you got a database, you got a data, you got a schemas, and you got a store procedure. So what you did is using the tooling to migrate into a SQL using data bump, and then you upload it to the portal to do the assessment. So Correct. When you think you're ready, then you can use the tooling to migrate the data as well as the schema and store procedure onto the new environment, which is in this case you're using Big Animal.
Yes.
Great.
Big Animal with Postgres Advanced Server, with the Oracle compatibility. I have to, yeah.
So here's a question from the audience. Well, how much it costs for the tool and migration portal?
At the moment, you have a support contract with EDB, standard, where then you can use the migration toolkit.
I think it's for free, right? The migration people can create a user in the portal, and the
migration portal is for free. Yeah, you can create a user on the EDB website, and then you can use the migration portal. No, the migration toolkit is a tool you get the moment you decide to have a support contract with EDB to support your Postgres or your Postgres Advanced Server environment.
So do the assessment themselves, like a POC, or just to see how it works? Yeah. They can just download the stuff and then use the migration portal.
Yeah, but the migration portal will not do data. It will only do objects.
I see. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, let's get back to this, and we do the wrap up. So yeah, so we just finishing the demos. Again, if you have any question, please feel free to ask in the Q&A session. Yeah, thank you for your time. We open for any questions. So I don't know whether we have more questions from the audience. I think I'm just going to repeat some of them, which I think already been answered by Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I just repeat one of them. Altaf asked, in the past migrations, do you have any best practices timelines for migrating Oracle database size of 300 gigabyte? Takes X amount of time using migration tooling and Postgres. I think Rob already answered. Mm-hmm. Maybe from your side, any estimate, or I think it's very much depending on the complexity of the data database. So database size 300 gigabyte, it doesn't really tell much until
of course it's the complexity, but it's also dependent on the network capabilities you have. Are you moving locally? What I've shown in my demo was from a local system to a system in the cloud. And there you get just the physical constraints of how fast is the network. And that then will determine how fast you can migrate 300 gig of data from one location to the other. That will mostly be determined by the speed and the bandwidth of the network you have at hand. But it depends.
Yeah, and we can help out, right? So reach out to us.
Yeah, we can help out as well.
We can help out to do the estimate and to discuss with you. So we got 2 more minutes to conclude. Do we have a slide for that, or
the best question?
The best question, indeed, the winner of the best question. So I've asked Rob to help out here. We've got a winner, Otto. Thank you for sending those questions, and appreciate for your attendance. So you're the winner of this episode for the migration. So we will reach out to you and to give you this 25 euro gift card. So very much appreciated. And we also have a last question. So would you like EDB to follow up, like, for example, the estimation of their migration, the 300 gigabyte, or maybe other questions that you might have? Please feel free to select the answer, and then we will get back to you. So with that, any final wording from you, Ed, before we wrap up this this session?
The final word, don't be scared when I'm moving to Postgres. We can help you with that, and I also want to thank you for attending this webinar.
Yeah. So with that, thank you everybody. Thank you Rob and Alice for your support, and thank you for all the attendees for this session. So I wish you have a great day.